Well, if you are a diehard Knicks fan and you spend any time on social media or YouTube, you probably heard of this name before. KnicksFanTV, a diehard Knicks podcast and YouTube channel giving a voice to all Knicks fans, for the fans, by the fans. Without further ado, let's bring in one of those voices behind the powerhouse show, JD Sportstalk. JD, appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on today.
Sam, thank you for having me. Excited to talk New York Knicks basketball.
Let's do it. Let's do it, JD. So let's start with one of the biggest, of course, headlines this offseason. The Knicks move on from Tom Thibodeau, who was the coach 5 years, 5 seasons for the Knicks. They now hire Mike Brown, two-time coach of the year, 2009 with Cleveland, and then, of course, 2023 most recently with the Sacramento Kings. 32nd head coach in New York Knicks franchise history. JD, who are the Knicks getting with Mike Brown?
The Knicks are getting a coach that has won approximately about 60% of his games. He was a 3-time champion as an assistant with the Golden State Warriors. He is under the tutelage of, Steve Kerr. He's been to a big market teams in terms of a head coach. And he was last the coach of the Sacramento Kings, where at that time, offensively, they were the #1 rated offense, which was an NBA record at that time. So the New York Knicks are excited to bring a coach that they believe will be able to maximize their personnel and their roster. A roster, Sam, that, is pretty much tapped out from a salary perspective with the new CBA in the NBA. And therefore, this front office is looking for a new system that is able to tap into a few areas where they felt they could have maximized last season.
Now, when you get a coach as experienced as Mike Brown and you look at his resume, he's coached players like LeBron James. He's coached players like Kobe Bryant, Tim Duncan as an assistant, Stephen Curry as well. What experience does that bring to this New York Knicks franchise?
Well, it brings a lot of experience when you're talking about the likes of a Karl-Anthony Towns, a Jalen Brunson, OG Anunoby, and Mikal Bridges. You have different personalities in the same locker room. And therefore, it is very important when you bring a head coach that has been in locker rooms with strong personalities, different types of, characters there. You saw the Knicks did sign PJ Tucker there late in the season because they wanted PJ Tucker to instill a little bit of mental toughness and some energy infusion into the locker room. Well, Mike Brown brings a lot of energy and a lot of toughness, and being able to have the experience with some of those superstars previously in the NBA, I think was one of the attractive qualities that, had the front office interested in him becoming the new head coach of the New York Knicks. So Mike Brown having that experience, I think, is very valuable. You have an 82-game season, especially now, Sam, where, minutes and sometimes players need to take a night off. In the playoffs, the intensity rises. And when you go through adversity, which this Knicks team will, his experience in those moments, being able to be in those locker rooms, that's when that experience for Mike Brown will be tested. And that's where the Knicks front office believes that he will be an asset when the Knicks face adversity and when the Knicks are in the playoffs.
Now, JD, I think I know your answer here. I'm going to ask it anyway. Obviously, the fan base is pretty split from what from what I know when it comes to Tom Thibodeau being let go. Obviously, he was there 5 seasons, brought this team to the furthest they've ever been, the Eastern Conference Finals since the year 2000. When, of course, they lost to the Indiana Pacers then. They lost last year to the Indiana Pacers. Don't get me started on the Indiana Pacers this year. Indiana Pacers have always been a thorn, it seems like. But just back to that Tom Thibodeau firing, JD, when you hear say, Tom Thibodeau brought them to the furthest they've ever been in 25 years, why did you let go of Tom Thibodeau? What's your thoughts?
Listen, that's a very strong and compelling argument because those are facts. Right? It's the first time in over 25 years that we've been to the Eastern Conference Finals, and there's been steady growth throughout his tenure. You talk about where the Knicks were before he was here and where he left them in terms of stability, culture, in terms of a destination now for NBA stars, not just regular players. NBA superstars now have a basketball reason, Sam, to want to come to the New York Knicks. So that is all, a lot of great things that he's done for the organization. At the same time, as you grow, expectations grow. And at the end of the day, the roster they had last year, the front office did their evaluations, and they felt that not enough was brought out of that team. They felt that they could have gone a little bit further. So although accomplishments were had in the midst of that journey. The ultimate destination where the Knicks got wasn't the NBA Finals, and the way the Eastern Conference with the Cleveland Cavaliers, them beating the Boston Celtics in the second round, many felt that that was the NBA Finals matchup or the Eastern Conference Finals matchup right there. That the winner of that series was going to eventually go to the NBA Finals. You get over that hump, and then you play a Pacers team, which, listen, at the end of the day, now they've proven that they were definitely an NBA Finals team, especially with the matchup they had against the Oklahoma City Thunder. But at that time, the front office felt the Knicks should have beaten the Pacers, got into the NBA Finals. It didn't happen, but I also think it's the way that it happened. I just feel like there were certain things within the team offensively, defensively that just wasn't maximized, and therefore the front office decided to go into a new direction.
Yeah, a lot of fans would obviously point at Thibodeau playing those starters a lot of minutes. Thibodeau, obviously, 5 seasons with the New York Knicks, longest tenured coach, I believe, with the Knicks since Jeff Van Gundy. You've got to go back 1996 to 2001, I believe. So we'll see what happens with Mike Brown. I mean, in that press conference, Mike Brown spoke a lot about pace. He wants to see a faster pace of offense for this New York Knicks team. My question to you, JD, when it comes to personnel that the Knicks have, you look at a Jalen Brunson, who's obviously the captain. He's an all-star. He's a great player, one of the best point guards the Knicks have had in recent memory. But some would say that he does a lot of iso ball, kind of slows the offense down. Do you believe Mike Brown's pace and fast-paced offense could work with a player like Jalen Brunson?
It's going to be interesting because I know a lot of the conversation is pace and playing faster. That's the new theme now for the New York Knicks. I'm interested to see how this happens in the sense that, pace doesn't always have to be just running fast, straightforward. It could be movement of the basketball. It could be player movement. It could be, the way that you design your sets. So pace doesn't necessarily, have to be that Jalen Brunson has to run like Tyrese Halliburton now. However, Jalen Brunson is going to have to be a willing player in the system because he's not the Aaron Fox who Mike Brown coached in Sacramento. He's not Steph Curry who Mike Brown coached in Golden State. Jalen Brunson is more of a, half court, it would seem, half court player, isolation player. How will that mesh with Mike Brown? So maybe Mike Brown will play him a little bit more off ball. And this is where I'm saying the creativity comes into play and how you design the system so that everyone that can fit your system and maximize the pace and the speed in which they're saying that they want to play. So I am this is to me one of the most interesting storylines heading into the season is how does the coach mesh the personnel to play his system?
Certainly interesting, JD. I mean, this roster, you look at the starting lineup, obviously they have a new coach, but a lot of players are really the same going to be from last year as things stand. You have Jalen Brunson, Karl-Anthony Towns, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, Josh Hart, Mitchell Robinson. Those guys are all still on the Knicks. So obviously you look at the starting lineup this past year that Thibodeau would roll out there, and they were a pretty big negative in the plus minus. I mean, what are you seeing there? I mean, are you a bit concerned, or what do you think Mike Brown's going to have to do to get Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns, let's say those two superstars, kind of in synergy with some people talking about their defensive shortcomings?
And that's another interesting development that's gonna happen this season is, those statistics, how much is that, even the previous head coach in terms of the minutes. When we talked about one of the reasons why they went into a different direction, it was the minutes allocation, the substitution patterns and what those lineups were after you went to the bench and at points of the game that he went into the bench. So does the front office believe that they're starting five with Josh Hart in there is ultimately a positive? And if it is, then Mike Brown is going to have to figure that out in terms of his patterns and how he wants to maximize that. Or is Mitchell Robinson going to be the starter? Because I think ultimately that's a part of the answer to your question is what's going to be the starting five? Are they going to go back to the original starting five with Josh Hart, or are they going to insert Mitchell Robinson, go with a bigger lineup, and then with their free agent acquisitions, those could be guys that can come off the bench and complement a new rotation off the bench. So I think player development, added rotations, it's all going to come together. And that's where you're going to get your new lineup and potentially positive net rating lineups as well.
Tom Thibodeau, obviously, a coach that had a lot of controversy. Some people liked him, some people didn't like him. When you looked at Coach Thibodeau, what areas do you think he went wrong with this Knicks team?
The Knicks made this decision, I think, based on a few key reasons here. Number one, I didn't think they were aligned as far as the rotations and the minute allocations of this roster. You know, in terms of his substitution patterns, not extending the rotation further, going into their young guys. You know, this is an era now with the new CBA where, you know, you have to draft. And when you draft, you have to play some of these prospects because of the fact that, you know, it's not like the previous CBA where you can just sign players and there was a little bit more flexibility. You don't have to pay tax money after a certain period of a cap amount. So player development was huge with Pacome Dadier, their first round pick, Tyler Kolek, Ariel Hukporti, who many believe could have gotten more minutes as a backup center, especially when Mitchell Robinson wasn't there in the fold. So having a little bit more trust into the rest of the roster, the rest of the rotation, that not being there. And then at the end, you saw they had to sign a PJ Tucker. They were scrambling to add to the team in the playoffs. You saw when they had to play a Delon Wright, Landry Shamet, and even when those guys played and they played well, he still did not really play them as much consistently. And that, I think, led to a lot of frustrations in the front office in terms of the head coach trusting his veteran players, who he knows, and doing it maybe a little bit too much where they were overextended, did not quite have enough there to close out in the playoffs. So player development, rotations, and also, you know, system. The system that he ran, the front office felt did not necessarily maximize the roster and personnel that was on this team.
Yeah, I mean, JD, you spoke right there about the almost over reliance on starters that Tibbs would do and not looking as much to the bench. Maybe in those couple of last Indiana Pacer games, maybe, you know, you mentioned he played some of those other players. Knicks, I believe, were ranked dead last, I want to say, in bench points last year. Now they add Jordan Clarkson, who averaged 16 points. I believe he scored the most bench points since the 2020-2021 season. They also add other players as well. But let's talk about Clarkson. What do you think Clarkson's going to bring to that second unit?
Clarkson reminds me a little bit of a little J.R. Smith infusion into Madison Square Garden, which could be good. And again, maybe it could be not so good because you're going to get some knucklehead plays. But in a weird way, I do think that's necessary in these championship teams. I think you see it in championship caliber teams where you always get this player that's high energy, that can create, that can play make a little bit, that can score. And also that the fans gravitate to a little bit of showmanship, a little bit of entertainment. It's all part of the equation here. And so Jordan Clarkson, you know, he's been rumored to be a Knick for a while now in terms of the trade wins with Danny Ainge in Utah. But it finally happens now as a free agent. He's also a client of Clutch Sports. So that's a little bit of a nugget there. The first business that they're conducting since they had the private meetings with Rich Paul. So now you have a Clutch client. They extend their business. But Jordan Clarkson being able to be that combo guard scorer off the bench, you saw in the playoffs, they did not have that. Although they played Delon Wright and Landry Shamet, those guys are not necessarily guys that get to the basket the way that Jordan Clarkson does. You know, three of over his last 3 seasons, those has been his highest free throw attempts per game seasons, and he's 33 at, you know, about 4 free throw attempts per game. So as he's in his 30s, his free throw attempts are rising, which tells me he still has a lot left in the tank. He can still get to the basket, and he is still being an aggressive player. And those are things I think the Knicks saw on film as he is getting a little bit up there in age, but that he could still bring to this team off the bench, and in some cases, when needed, as a spot starter.
Yeah, Knicks certainly can use some of that scoring that Jordan Clarkson brings to the table. Another player the Knicks added, of course, Guerschon Yabusele, who played with the Philadelphia 76ers last year, had some success overseas. JD, what do you see? What do you see with Guerschon?
Well, I think what they saw in Guerschon is a guy that is 6'8", 265 pounds. So he's very strong. He played in the Olympics, and his three-point shooting at 38% from three last year gives them the ability to play variation of lineups off the bench. when you can play him at the 5, you want to play a little bit small ball. And if you do that, now you have the true ability to play that quote unquote 5-out offense where everybody on the floor can be a shooter along with, a Jordan Clarkson to play make. So, Yabusele was right around the lottery pick. He was the 16th overall pick by the Boston Celtics in 2016. So although he went away to France, he's a pretty talented player. And now on his second stint back, you saw the success that he had working on his game. He played in the Olympics. Everybody knows him for his famous dunk on LeBron James. He plays with aggressiveness. He's very physical. He's strong. So adding strength, adding shooting, and adding some, more passion to the roster. He's also, again, like I mentioned, from France. You have Pacome Dadier, your first round pick. So, building relationships. Their second round pick this year. Diawara is also from France. So I know it sounds a little funny, but sometimes front offices do look into building the locker room, building chemistry, building those relationships. So Yabusele to me is a very solid signing that gives Mike Brown now different creativity and creative ways to be utilized.
When I hear LeBron James in France, I can't help but think about a couple of years ago with LeBron James getting into it with Frank Ntilikina and Enes Kanter there. I don't know if you remember that, but
Another Frenchman.
yeah, another Frenchman, Frank Ntilikina back in the day. It just shows how far we've come here as Knicks fans. It's been a pretty big journey here. I mean, obviously the Knicks still rounding out their roster. There's still a final roster spot, I believe. We've heard names like Chris Paul. We've heard potentially Malcolm Brogdon, Ben Simmons, maybe Damian Lillard. JD, who do you think the Knicks should grab with that final roster spot? Who can they grab realistically, you believe?
You mentioned with those names, you've also heard names like Marcus Smart, Trey Lyles, who was a former player of Mike Brown in Sacramento. It's going to be interesting. I think the Knicks are going to continue to wait a little bit longer. I think they're going to focus first on the coaching staff. Mike Brown still doesn't have an associate head coach, which the James Borrego news was a little bit surprising for them. I know they were disappointed in that. They thought they had a chance to get him. So I think the focus will be there first, and then they'll round out the roster. It looks like from what's been reported that they definitely have checked in on, which has been before they made the sign of Clarkson, Russell Westbrook, who's 6'4", and Ben Simmons, who's a 6'10" kind of combo guard wing hybrid. They may be looking, Malcolm Brogdon, who's 6'5". It looks like they may be looking for a bigger size guard to bring off the bench that can give them, variations of lineups from a height perspective. So it's going to be interesting. I think they're going to go with a veteran. I'm not sure who because there's so many players, but there's also going to be some players that could be, set free. Cole Anthony was just bought out yesterday, and he's going to sign a 1-year deal with the Milwaukee Bucks. So I think the Knicks are going to be a little bit more patient with this one last roster spot, and they're going to make the decision on the best fit.
And JD, I know your man CP is out there in Vegas for summer league action. Knicks had a tough loss the other night against Detroit. Tyler Kolek, 10 points, 5 turnovers. Pacome Dadier playing there as well. What did you make out of that Knicks summer league game against Detroit?
It wasn't a great one. It's the first summer league game. Cooper Flag struggled his first game and then came out with 31 points in his second game. Wembanyama, if we go by that, Wembanyama and Cooper Flag were bust after game one overreactions. And then they came on and finished strong. So, you know what it is. This is what the Knicks do. This is what the fan base does. We overreact either good or bad. And it wasn't a great game. I think they struggled to run the offense. Tyler Kolek had 5 turnovers all around from the. I think Pacome Dadier played well. He has 17 points. He was being a slasher. He showed a little bit of everything. Needs to be a little bit more aggressive. I think it's just the first game. They're getting their feet wet. I'm looking for the second game now. Now I'm looking for some of those players to elevate. They got a little bit of that out the way. I think they'll play much better in game 2.
Hopefully we see that. I believe the score was 104, I want to say, to 86. I just looked it up with that loss from Knicks to Detroit. JD, let's do a lightning round here, all right? I'm going to ask you a couple questions, do a couple of quick answers. And yeah, let's start. Mitchell Robinson, he's been in some trade rumors, obviously, these last few years. JD, do you believe Mitchell Robinson gets traded this season?
Ooh, I do not. I think at the end of the day, as he proved in the playoffs, he is too valuable to just give away. and he is a game wrecker. You don't trade away those type of assets. Now, if he gets hurt, might be a different story.
We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. I like Mitchell Robinson. He's the longest tenured Knick, I believe. So fan favorites
Yep.
blocking this monster. I think he's good for the Knicks personally, but we'll see what they end up doing. Another question, obviously. A lot of Capital Region fans here, they know Dante DiVincenzo. He visited this area last summer. I interviewed him actually at an event here. He's obviously a Minnesota Timberwolf. Is there a chance that this Knicks brass tries to trade back for Dante DiVincenzo? How realistic do you think that is?
I don't think it's realistic. Only because he played very well in the playoffs for the Minnesota Timberwolves. He's on a very good contract. As Knicks fans know, it's funny when they first signed him, they actually criticized the contract. Now they're like, "Wait, let's get him back. It's an amazing contract. It's a bargain deal." And especially with the chemistry and what he built here as a starter, he's coming off the bench in Minnesota. Again, because of the way the Minnesota playoffs ended there, struggling against OKC, but he was being a bright spot. Them re-signing Julius Randle, I just think Minnesota's looking to build and continue to build around Anthony Edwards. So I don't see them quite giving them away unless you want to overpay. And I don't know that Dante DiVincenzo is a player that you overpay for.
Breaking my heart with that answer,
I
JD, but
know.
we'll see. We're breaking my heart there. But let's move on. Next question I have. Will the Knicks regret not trading for Kevin Durant when he was available?
I'll tell you what, if the Houston Rockets go to the NBA Finals and the Knicks don't, yes. Because this window, it's very tricky window for the Knicks. You want to say it's maybe 2 years? Some fans are saying this is the year. Some fans are saying this 2 years. And then if that doesn't work out, you reshuffle a little bit. If the Rockets exceed or meet expectations and the Knicks don't, I would say yes, they'll regret it.
Biggest surprise team in the Eastern Conference next year?
Biggest surprise team in the Eastern Conference next year. I'm gonna say, is it the Atlanta Hawks? The Atlanta Hawks, they had a listen, they're the charm talk of town now of the NBA circles with their free agent acquisitions in the offseason with Kristaps Porzingis. They're gonna get Jalen Johnson back. I think the Atlanta Hawks, I'm saying it more, we don't like them, but it's more of their expectations. This is their time to win now. They've made some moves. It's your moment now, Trae Young. There's no excuses. You have to come in this season and make a statement. And therefore, if they do, they'll be considered a surprise team.
And which team in the East poses the biggest threat to the New York Knicks next season?
The Cleveland Cavaliers. They won six, I believe it was 64 wins last season. They had a little bit of a tricky playoffs with some injuries. The Boston Celtics are expected to take a step back. And so that means you still have to give the Cavaliers that respect. I would say the Cleveland Cavaliers are the biggest threat to the New York Knicks.
Yeah, very good answer. I think Detroit might be a sneaker there as well with Kate Cunningham. We'll see what happens there. Another question I have, a lot of fans wondering, will Giannis Antetokounmpo be traded this season?
This season, no. Next season, yes.
Okay. JD, for you, proudest moment you've been a Knicks fan?
Proudest moment that I've been a Knicks fan.
Giving you
I
the questions here.
I haven't seen a lot. Proudest moment, 1999, Allen Houston. Like the 1999, the 1999 Knicks. That was when I first started, watching them, and it came when they went to the NBA Finals. Has to be the proudest moment.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I think for me, just this season, this playoffs was amazing seeing Jalen Brunson go at it. And Karl-Anthony Towns against Detroit too. Those couple shots he hit in the end there, that was amazing for me. All right, let's end it like this, JD. Last question I have. Here we go. Will the captain, Jalen Brunson, make an appearance on Knicks Fan TV by the end of the year?
I'm gonna say yes. There's a lot of pressure on the captain, especially after what transpired, last night. I think he finally holds his end of the bargain, and I think he makes an appearance on Knicks Fan TV sometime this year.
All right, JD. Where can people find you if they want more Knicks Fan TV content?
You can find me at JD Sports Talk at X. I guess now X instead of Twitter. JD Sports Talk NY on Instagram, and you can find us. I'm the co-host of Knicks Fan TV, so Knicks Fan TV on YouTube and all social media. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
For
Happy
the fans,
to
by the fans.
always connect for the fans by the fans, and always happy to connect with the fans because that's what we're about.
JD Sports Talk. Greatly appreciate your time. Good luck with this offseason with Knicks Fan TV, and we'll be in touch for sure. Thank you so much for your time.